full meeting. To begin with, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land in which we meet, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who may be with us here this evening. Item 1 on the agenda is membership. Membership is as listed, with Councillor Lawrence on an approved leave of absence and an apology this evening, which is item 2. Item 3 is disclosures of conflicts of interest. Are there any disclosures? Councillor Amir.
Yes, I'd like to make a disclosure in relation to item 8.3. So I have a financial conflict in that my house is one of the 500 homes that applied to be in the first wave of the Solar Savers program.
Thank you, Councillor Amir. Are there any other disclosures? No. Item 5, confirmation of the minutes of council meeting from the 9th of April 2018. That's moved by Councillor Amir and seconded by Councillor Messina. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Item 5 is question and submission time. I'll go first to the questions that were lodged online before the deadline. There are 2 questions that were submitted by Angela Denton from Northcote. So the first question is, I have made 5 phone calls...
Excuse me, Beck, could you speak up?
Yep.
Because it's very...
Yep.
I can barely hear, but
how about this?
I'm not sure if the people in the
Is this
audience...
better?
Yep.
Okay, hang on. I have made 5 phone calls over the course of 3 months requesting an audience with Councillor Surf to discuss City of Darebin performance around a number of local issues. Despite leaving messages on each occasion, Kim has only called me back once and was then unavailable when I returned the call. Can Councillor Kim Lassurf explain her understanding of representative democracy in the context of her repeated failure to respond to my request for contact? Firstly, I would like to acknowledge that both Ms Denton and I have not been able to successfully engage via telephone calls. I have returned Ms Denton's telephone calls on 2 separate occasions and also left a voice message suggesting that we liaise by email as well so that I can gain an understanding of her concerns. I have yet to receive an email. Ms Denton was also contacted by staff seeking a face-to-face meeting with myself, however this was not accepted. Ms Denton's second question is that the City of Darebin has a poor performance record when it comes to bread and butter council business and has repeatedly failed to deliver on capital works and infrastructure projects which would benefit the majority of citizens and not just minority interest. What mechanisms will City of Darebin use to ensure that rates are spent efficiently and equitably and that all residents, and not just trendy minority groups, have a say in how rates are spent? And the response from Council is that a recent organisational restructure led by the new CEO has been undertaken to enable and facilitate improved service delivery and the completion of the Capital Works program. The restructure has centralised capital delivery and has also clarified officer responsibility and improved accountability. In addition to this, the 2018-2019 Capital Works program proposed in the draft budget has been supported by improved planning, integration, scoping, resource planning and prioritisation. The second lot of questions are from Anne Laver from Northcote. Would you like to read out your questions? We'll get you a microphone, just if you hold on a moment.
My first question relates to the recycling contract, which is before the council tonight on a confidential matter. I don't know if I can raise this question properly, so I apologise. The current contract is with SKM, and I was looking on their website and I found that they only sort waste. They do not, in fact, recycle waste. So I was asking the council, could they please consider using other companies and seek tenders from other companies that actually break down waste and actually reuse, instead of just storing and creating a fire in Kuru. For example, there's a huge company that's supported by Sustainability Victoria called Alice Fraser, and another one called Astron Plastics, and they all reuse and use it in construction materials. So I suggest that to council. So would council be prepared to look at that for me, please?
So our response to that question is that you're right, SKM is currently our processing provider. They process the recycling. which means that they sort the recycling waste for further processing to markets that you reuse that recyclable material. So over 90% of the recyclables that is collected is recycled and used to create other products. The recycled materials need to be separated from the curbside collections at the material recycling facility. So there are only 3 companies in Victoria that do that sorting before it can be used to create new products, and they are Vigi, Polytrade and SKM. And they're the only 3 companies that offer a suitable capacity to deal with the volumes of recyclables that we collect, or any council collects in Victoria. SKM have made a significant investment into new technologies that will ensure the consistent quality for Australian and overseas markets, including China. And they are working closely with the Municipal Association of Victoria, the Metro Waste, MWRRG, Waste Recovery and Resource Group, and all local councils. And so we're investigating a range of options, including waste-to-energy solutions, palletising and cleaning processes with the recyclables. Darebin is focused on the life cycle of the products, including new markets for plastics and low-value commodities, and the future retendering of the current processing and sorting contract will form part of that work. Establishing new entrants into a market will require a lot of investment up front, and it needs time to mobilise a plant and have the appropriate equipment. So it is anticipated that this work will form part of Darebin's strategic direction through the review of our waste strategy, which is happening, which will start towards the end of this year and happen over the next 12 months. And that will include collaborative efforts across councils and industry and the waste management groups. So does that make sense? Yeah.
My second question is relates to Streets for the People. I went along to the meeting with Streets for the People along what's going to happen on the railway line, South Rail Line, and they advised me that their intention is to take away the parking along the railway line, all the way from Park Street right through to Durban. So I'm really upset about that, and I believe that for a start you used a Sydney consultant. It's not even from Victoria, I wouldn't have a clue about North. And you haven't informed the residents that this is what's going to happen, you're going to take all the way car parking away. And I don't think it's in line with your mission statement. And it doesn't remain for for example, the well-being that you promote for all community. So all the residents within 500 metres were advised, but no one else knows that they're not going to be able to park at train stations. And I want to know what's your intention, for people who can't walk to the train station, who have to actually, there's heaps of people that live way more than 500 metres away from the train station. So what's your plan?
I don't think that any decisions have been made about the future streetscape of the streets that you mentioned, because we are currently in consultation to determine an outcome at the end. So at the moment we're currently in phase 2 of 3 of the consultation phases, and in this phase, the second phase, it's about listening to the community and to begin developing concept designs for those residents that live along that corridor. So we're seeking to resolve the existing issues that they're facing, make sure that the roads or the streets are more people-friendly and safer and more accessible. The first phase of the community consultation included much broader community consultation, and that happened in March 2018, and so it was advertised to 3,200 households, as well as through council's regular engagement channels, including website, social media, and I believe it was also in the Leader newspaper. And so that wasn't restricted to the local residents, that was for all people in Darebin to participate if they wanted to. And then, so that's the first phase, and so we're in the second phase where we're consulting around the streets. There will be a third phase of the consultation where we'll share what we've heard back to the community with draft recommendations, and that will happen towards the end of May, so in about a month's time. And these will be shared widely to the community, including through the Leader newspaper, social media, and our regular channels for engagement.
The fact is, they've already made it complete, they've already said they're going to take away the car spots. You know,
that's what they may recommend to council, but it is a decision for council based on the technical expertise, the community feedback and a whole lot of other evidence that we have to balance off against each other when we make decisions. Okay. And just to your other point about the consultant was engaged to deliver this project was subject to a thorough procurement process and evaluation process in accordance with our procurement policy, and was selected based on their ability to deliver the best outcome for the community whilst ensuring value for money. The consultant team has exceptional level of collective knowledge in delivering similar projects, drawing a best practice experience not only in Melbourne but across Australia. I'll also note that the majority of the team do live in Melbourne and some of them are even residents of Darebin, and so they are all very committed to delivering a quality outcome in their own patch, and they are very committed to a successful process which will help define how we approach similar projects across Darebin. So we're really committed to getting this process right as well. Yep. The next question is from Andy Gray from Northcote, who isn't attending, so I will read out the question. How will the recommendations of the open spaces strategy that Darebin is currently compiling be budgeted for when the proposed 2018-19 budget doesn't seem to allow for outcomes to result from the strategy? Why do the strategic outcomes outlined in the budget specifically opportunities to live well, a livable city and involving our diverse community, and the associated major initiatives in the budget all neglect the positive impact and important role that the 1,000 of pets living in Darebin have for their owners and their communities? The response from council is that the open space strategy is a citywide strategy that considers the network and mix of open spaces across Darebin. The strategy is expected to provide guidance on the overall mix of open spaces in terms of meeting recreational needs, their character and biodiversity, amongst other things. When the open space strategy is finalised, the high-level guidance in it will be incorporated into any specific projects planned for 2018-19. New projects that arise directly from the open space strategy's consultation would be considered for implementation in the 2019-20 financial year and beyond. If there is a specific project relating to open space or pet ownership in Darebin that you do not see represented in the budget that we're currently consulting on, the 2018-19 budget, then I would encourage you to enter a submission into the consultation process for the budget. The budget is on public display and open for comment until the 11th of May, and if you'd like to receive more information, then it is on our website or you can call customer service. Council runs a range of educational activities to support pet ownership through the city, and these are planned to continue into next year, 2018-19. The next question is from David Isdale from Preston. Are you here this evening? No, I'll read the question. The speed limit on Murray Road between the intersections of High Street and Plenty Road increases back up to 60 kilometres per hour from the 40 kilometres per hour limit between Gilbert Road and High Street intersections. This seems to be an inconsistent approach to speed on the same stretch of road and makes braking from 60 to 40 kilometres per hour crossing the intersection on a green light too short a distance to do so at a very busy intersection for both vehicles and pedestrians. Given that there is now a newly opened Inspire Early Learning Centre at 235 to 239 Murray Road, falling in the 60 kilometre per hour zone, are there plans to reduce the limit? If not to 40, then at least 50. The reduced speed limit on Murray Road between Fitzroy Street and High Street was undertaken by Vic Roads in response to crashes and is also consistent with Council's approach of lowering speed limits to 40 kilometres per hour within residential neighbourhoods adjacent to schools, so Preston West Primary School, and within activity centres. And while Council is supportive of reducing the speed limit on Murray Road between High Street and Plenty Road, it is noted that Murray Road falls under the care and maintenance of Vic Roads, and requests for speed limit reduction should be directed to Vic Roads for assessment. In our experience, Vic roads do not currently support speed reductions to 50 kilometres per hour on their roads and require speed limit reductions to 40 kilometres per hour to meet set criteria, including certain types of uses like schools and lengths of active frontages like shopping strips. So I would encourage you to contact them to discuss this location in further detail, and I'm sure that the new Early Learning Centre would have interest in that as well. The second question from Mr Isdale is regarding the location of the rubbish bin on Murray Road. The bus stop between the intersection of High Street and Plenty Road heading east, positioned in front of Bob Jane T-Marts, has rubbish and recycle bins positioned a good 5 metres or so from the bus stop. Whilst not excusing the massive amount of littering that occurs in that location, I can't help but think this could be reduced significantly by a simple repositioning of the bins nearer to the bus stop. Can you please give some consideration to this? Our officers have advised that they will need to review the site, and as such we will take this question on notice and we will provide you with a written response once we've had a look on site. Okay, so those are all the questions that we received online. We received a couple questions. So I'll call on Robin Vogt to ask a question. Although I note that some of these are similar questions, but perhaps you can go first.
Thank you. In 2016, Darebin Council suddenly withdrew from the provision of disability services with almost no consultation. How have the resulting savings been spent, and has the promised disability advocacy and advice service been funded and implemented?
Thank you for your question. We will have to take that on notice because I do not have a response. I was not on council at the time that the decision was made to withdraw. So we will take that on notice and provide a written response to you. Thanks. Okay. I'll call on Audrey Grace.
Yeah, you have my question.
Okay, would you like me to read it out? Okay, no worries. Okay. Will Darebin Council ask my aged care for the time extension and block funding offered to them till the end of 2019? This will allow time to complete Council's investigation of its aged care services in time, end of May 2018. Will the Council provide a full description of their aged services to all residents and ask for feedback to inform them as to their decision? So we haven't made any decision relating to the future provision of aged care in response to the federal government reforms. What I can say is that that at our May meeting of Council, so our next Council meeting, we will be considering a report from staff about how best to consult with the community and gather further information to decide on the future direction of Council services to engage services to older people. So there will be a further consultation process before Council makes a decision, before we make any future decisions. So until we go through that process, it's hard to respond to your question because we're still in that phase of investigating and understanding the impact of the federal reforms.
A decision was made at Council about 12 months ago to set up a body to investigate. So that answer is really very much out of date. My concern is that May is the last chance. Next month, starting tomorrow, is the last chance of making a decision to ask for
For the time extension of
Yes,
the block
time
funding.
extension, yes, and the block funding, which would give you an extra 18 months.
I might just ask some advice from Ms Henderson. Would you like to respond to that?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. My understanding is that the block funding currently runs until 30th of June 2019. We've been advised by the federal government that there will be an invitation to extend that for a further year, but that invitation will not come until early 2019. And my view is that it is highly likely that Council will accept that invitation to extend. But that said, we don't know on what terms and conditions the extension may be on. So that's all we know at the moment, but it's highly likely that we will accept that.
However, the timeline is that the decision has to be made during May 2018.
So the advice that the officers are providing is that decision does not need to be made until 2019, not 2018.
No, that's the end of the extra time. You apply in May this year, and the end is at the end of 2019.
Okay, well...
But the application has to go in this month.
Okay, we might have to take this offline, this question offline, to follow up, because the officers are under a different impression to you, and we're very happy to follow that up tomorrow to make sure that we are both on the same page in terms of the timelines going forward. Thank you. The next question is from Margaret Ann Lima, Month.
Could you please explain why there is no reference to Council's ongoing role in the provision of services to older residents in older and active in Darebin, which is a directory for 2017 to 2019, so covering the year we've just been discussing. The only reference in page 52 is to My Aged Care, which is the upcoming system, which makes it appear that Council has already opted out of continuing to provide any support to older people needing advice and information. There were promises made to the active and healthy ageing committee that there would be support services set up both in ways and aged care, but there's no reference to that in here.
We will have to take that on notice. But I'd just like to reiterate the other point is that we have not made any decision about the future provision or the Council's provision of services to older people in our community, and that a report will be coming to us in the next Council meeting about a process that will lead to coming to that decision. And that process will include further consultation with our community, all the people in our community. But we will take on notice the concerns you raised about no reference to Council's role in providing aged care services in that directory. The next question is from, Ermiani?
Yes, that's me.
Yes? Yes. Why does Council want to withdraw from providing aged care? I think that's a similar question. Yes, Council has not made a decision. We, as I have just said, we are going through a process to collect feedback from our community and to look at the impacts that the federal reforms are having on our ability to deliver services, and that we will be making a decision about that process, not about whether what our role is in the future, but about the process we will go to make that decision at our next Council meeting in May. It's a very complicated space in terms of the provision of aged care, and there could be new services that we should be providing our community because they're currently not being provided, and we'll be taking a look at the whole suite of services that we're currently providing as well. So that will, in terms of the process of how we do that, that will come to us at our next meeting. But again, I'd like to reiterate, no decision has been taken by Council about the future provision of aged care services after the block funding ceases from the federal government. No decision has been made. Well, I can't say that. I can't say one way or the other because a decision has not been taken by council, and I'm here to represent the decisions of council. Yeah. The next question is from Syrian, but there isn't a question.
I just want to make a statement.
Okay. Yes.
I'm aware that you're not made a decision, but I thought I'd make a statement. I have been a Darebin resident for over 20 years, and I'm getting to the stage where I might start accessing the older person's services. So I'm saying that I would like the council to hold on to the services, and my lived experience tells me that privatizing, outsourcing, especially for what are called critical services, where when people are vulnerable, we want that service to be delivered by state or the council entity, not by private markets. Because some of us who lived here for a long time would know some of the privatization and the disaster, whether it's education or the energy outsourcing. So I'm putting forward, I agree, you're not made a decision, but as older residents, we hope the council will continue to provide services, especially because I also engage a lot of the migrant communities. All the migrant communities are vulnerable, especially when they get older, and they need to be protected. They have paid their taxes, they have paid their rates, so we need council services. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, although I think it's a submission, is from Serena Emili.
I've been told that I can't make a submission.
Okay.
So we'll continue to keep in contact with you through the chair. It was just in relation to a nom that was being raised.
Okay. Okay, there is 4 minutes left for questions or submissions. So are there any further questions?
I've got one that you should have a copy of.
No, I don't. I'm happy.
Yeah,
Well, yep. I've only got these ones left. Oh, okay. Is it this one? Mrs. Hook? Mrs. Hook?
I think it is.
Yes? Okay.
This is about the age and disability care. Sorry. Of the 3 tiers of government, federal, state and council, council is the closest to the people of their area and has best knowledge of local conditions. For years, Darebin Council has successfully provided age and disability care. I'm a recipient. Federal government's My Aged Care program is not an improvement on what we have. Under their program, how do we informedly choose from business, competing for business? What standard do they provide? What are the pitfalls and expenses if we want to change from an unsatisfactory provider? Are they monitored? To contact My Aged Care would be an 1800 number, and the person answering would be anywhere, not a local to us. Under our local council program, if we wish to alter the arrangement or if we have a problem, we can contact directly the appropriate council person. Along with many others, I ask you to retain the current Darebin Council Age and Disability Program to benefit the local people for whom you are well paid to care. My question, are you prepared to do the job for which you were elected? That is, continue to care for local Darebin people instead of abandoning us.
Thank you for your question. Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but no decision has been made about the future of our aged care services. We need to assess the impact that the federal reforms, the reforms that were introduced by the federal government in 2013, what impact they will have on our ability, on our service delivery as they currently stand, and what the future of what the future will be under those reforms and what we need to do perhaps to adapt to those reforms into the future. The decision hasn't been made. We will be making a decision on the process at our next meeting, and we'll be then spending the subsequent months consulting further with the community and hearing from you. And this letter can form part of that consultation into that process, and so that your voice is heard during that process before leading up to our final decision.
Do consult with us and let us know when sessions are going to be. There's no preparing the sessions, pick up what it's on.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes. We will make sure that we will advertise, make sure we advertise extensively to let people know when the sessions will be going on.
What happened to the working group that was decided on at a council meeting on the 13th of February 2017? I mean, you're talking about things that...
Okay, so you're not allowed to just shout out from the chamber. I'm happy to answer that question. The councillor working group had been meeting regularly, and I think we're due for one shortly. It's a councillor and officer working group so that the councillors remain up to date about what's been happening, what work the officers have been doing to investigate the impact of the reforms. That working group is still ongoing as far as I'm concerned, and we will be meeting next probably in the next few weeks or within the next month. Yes?
Mayor, I noticed
Councillor
that
Greco.
the question time's run out. I'll move a motion to extend question time if we need to.
Yes, sure. Councillor Greco, would you like to move a motion?
Yeah, I'll move a motion that we extend question time.
By how long? By how long?
15 minutes.
I think, so by 15 minutes? Okay. Is there a seconder? Councillor Rennie? All those in favour? Carried. So we'll extend question time by another 15 minutes. We'll go to this gentleman in the front row who's been waiting patiently.
Councillors and Mayor. My name is Anthony. I've been a resident here for about 40 odd years of Darebin, and I live on Graham Street. Now, my first question is that I think it was the early 90s, we had a petition that we implement 2-hour restriction parking along Graham Street between St George's and Durban Road. The reason, the action for that was because the students or people from across the road in Tate College, which became Tate College of course from a technical school, would learn not to park on Graham Street and move to the car parking on St George's Road. Now, the payoff for that for the residents along Graham Street was that we received 2 permanent parking per household, which was fine. We all agreed on that at that point in time. The disappointing part from that is that after a couple of years, you want to be paid for one and one for free. Then a year later, it became that one went up and the second was also to be paid. Now, I'm a little bit disappointed because I'm the one that actually organised the petition to win with, so it's a bit of a backfire for me. Some of the residents that live along there think that I've created this and I've gone to the council and it's been a revenue-making exercise, but it's not. I'm a little bit disappointed that we have to pay for these particular permanent parking now, because if people come to visit, especially the elderly, they can't park out there, so they'll park in the driveway. Now, can we implement permanent parking for the residents along Graham Street for free? I hope we will. That was the trade-off, as you can appreciate. And if we can, because I have spoken to the head dean at Northern Tate College, he agrees that if we convince these people not to park there and to go to George's Road, it'll help all the residents along that particular area. And that's my first question. Response?
I'm happy to provide a response now, but I'd like to follow up with some further officer advice. We revisited our, I think it's called the residential permit parking policy not that long ago, in the last 6 months, which obviously had those costs attached. And during that discussion, well, we had a long discussion about parking, not just obviously in your street, but across the city, and the fact that we are experiencing and will continue to experience greater shortage of parking than people would desire, and that the parking permit policy was doing a lot of work in ensuring that the residential parking that you have experienced in Kramer Street was protected to some degree with the permit system. In terms of the costs associated with the permit, I have only been on council for 2 years, so I wasn't aware that previously that the first one was for free, because I've never actually had to buy a permit myself. And I'm happy to take that up with the officers, and I wondered whether there was any concessions for people who may be on maybe low income or have a pension card as well. So I'll follow that up.
Thank you. My second part is that some of the trees that are in the area have a little, I suppose, a little pip that falls from the tree in late autumn. We've noticed that some of those pips there that fall onto the vehicles, the cars, actually stick to the cars, don't wash off. I suggest that we might look at some trees that are a little bit more, I suppose, suitable for the area. I've done a small amount of homework and believe that maybe we might look at, say, an olive tree plantation type. They don't grow too tall, they're an evergreen, don't need much water, and we can call Darebin the Sea of Peace.
So if these are the trees up on Kramer Street, we can refer that on to our Parks and Gardens team to follow up. They're responsible for the selection of the street trees, and we can follow that up and make sure that they're not used going into the future as well to cause problems for other people. Thank you. Are there any other questions? We'll go to, Serena up the back.
Sorry, I didn't have this one written out, but we already have some notice of it. I'm just wondering if council will write a letter of support to Moreland Council regarding the acquisition of some grassland that adjoins the River Creek in Moreland.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
That grassland obviously is very important, and it would be terrible to see that area given over to building blocks.
Yeah, so I think it's my understanding the state government is currently selling that land. Is it that piece of land?
Yeah, it's going to the first right of refusal process right now. Submissions are due to Moreland Council by the 11th of May.
Okay. It is very much, I guess, in line with policy in terms of protecting that open space, so we'll take a look at that submission process and what we can do as a council. Thank you. There's a question down. We'll just wait for the microphone, thanks.
My question is about our site around I believe our footpaths around are extremely dangerous for all the people in there. Now we got all these buildings go up, multi-stores, and they are totally unsafe for the people who work on footpaths. There is no one scared around Darebin who complies with the safe population. No one scared. Even you guys got there at High Street, there is a multi-store there, next to a coffee shop. They got tables outside, they got a scaffold again. And they got all this scaffold, and they got the plywood.
Is it the plastic, the clear plastic?
Sometimes it's the shaped cloth. Yes. Sometimes you got the plywood around, like you guys have in the school, in the private school, was very nice. It looks very cool, looks very safe, but it's very nice. Because if you didn't go on the corners, there is a big gap. Anything can be kicked out. And this one in the street next to the coffee shop, even they got on the top. I don't think the criminal one is your there, but there is a bay of plants. It's full pack. There's no thick wood. Anything comes out, it's the plants can fall on the footpath. I know the coffee shop, they got a little bit, sometimes they put their umbrellas. But this is very dangerous. Also there is another one I don't understand because the council is there all the time. Next to the main street where the seniors club is, you guys know what's going on there. I don't have to they make a trench that has to go down. There is a big step there. We got all this water to come around.
Yeah. So just before I respond, could you just state your name so that we can record it?
My name is Manuel Mosso.
Thank you. The CEO has just said that we are happy to follow up with you directly about the location. So if you wanted...
It's everywhere.
We can only deal with the ones that we know about. So if you could provide the locations of...
You guys will force that they put those timbers to go on, but I don't force you, I can show you. The problem is, I know that the job's got to be done, but the footpath belongs to us, not the builders. The builders cannot use their footpath as they own the footpath. And if you got the footpath open, if the footpath is open, you must clean the footpath. No rocks, nothing. I can show you a photo with bricks in the middle of the road, the one next to the down in the Bell Street.
Yeah. So, as I said, we're happy to follow up. We are putting more money. The proposed budget is allocating more money to footpaths in the next year as well, because we know that we probably need to catch up on the maintenance of our footpaths. And if you provide any locations you'd like us to take a look at, then we can follow that up. And the best way would be to send an email through to our CEO, so we'll provide you those details.
Yeah, but actually I sent you guys a lot of emails for the safety, but then they never answered my emails.
Okay, well, if you wanted to forward them through to the CEO for her to follow up, she said that she would be happy to follow up on your behalf. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, that concludes question and submission time. Oh, sorry.
I wanted to make a submission about 8.2. Will I do that now?
Okay, so you can do that now, or you can wait until the item. What would you prefer to do?
I'm happy to do it now.
Okay, we're going to... So, Mr. Berryman.
John Berryman is my name. I'm the Secretary of the Save Stratham Open Space Community Coalition. I'm asking the Council to reject this submission 8.2. First of all, I want to say thank you to the Darebin Council for their great support of the Stratham Open Space. I prepared a whole lot of words today about the bullying behaviour of the La Trobe University and how this was a Trojan horse. And then I came to think that we actually need La Trobe University to be a place where future leaders of this country, and indeed the world, are to be developed. La Trobe should be showing through their actions how to implement change. La Trobe should be developing methods to streamline processes. This proposal from La Trobe demonstrates to their staff, their students and the rest of the community that if they don't like the rules and the scrutiny, then find a bypass. Show your might, do what you think is okay. All you have to do is look at the 6 o'clock news. And we're horrified by the large corporates that have bypassed rules and scrutiny. What does the current behaviour of these corporates talk about? What does it show to our emerging leaders? And in fact, somebody said to me outside before that the leaders of the new banks are at La Trobe now. Their behaviour and this proposal from La Trobe says that you're big enough, break the rules, bypass the process, do what you like. Our children, and I'm talking primary school children, accept that governments and big businesses lack any integrity. Our children don't trust any of them. Until a few weeks ago, it seemed that Australian sporting teams provided the leadership on integrity. Now that model's been broken. I want La Trobe to lead our community in demonstrating integrity.
We're at time now.
Okay. I ask you to reject this proposal, and I ask for La Trobe to actually show some real leadership, not bypass rules.
Thank you. There are 2 other people who registered to speak to that item. Would you like, Mr. Roberts, like to speak now?
I'll leave it to you now.
You leave it to later? Yep. And Andrew Van Vakaris?
Oh, absolutely.
Yep, okay, great. Thank you. So that now concludes question and submission time. We'll move now to item 6, petitions. Councillor Greco.
Mayor, I have a petition that I'd like to present tonight.
Thank you. Can you speak into your microphone and could you read out the petition?
Okay. Mayor, I have a petition to present. There are petitions in relation to the Darebin Council's aged care services. There are 1,222 signed petitioners. I have copies of them here. I have the original copies here. If I may, Mayor, as per the governance rules, I'll read out what the petition states. The petition states, "We, the undersigned residents and ratepayers of Darebin, petition Council to publicly commit to maintaining its role as a provider of aged care services, including transport, cleaning, personal care, meals, home maintenance and respite care into the future. We urge Council not to abandon its role in providing the above aged care services in view of the Federal Government's privatisation agenda of aged care services. We are proud that Darebin Council is a long-standing provider of high-quality aged care services and has built a strong and trusted reputation as a preferred provider with elderly residents and their families in the community. In Darebin, 25,534 people, 18.8% of the total population, are aged over 60, and many are receiving or will soon require support services to enable them to remain in their home. We firmly believe that current and future aged community members should continue to have the choice to receive home care services directly from trusted and committed Darebin Council staff." So, Mayor, I'll move that the petition be received, that the petition be referred to the Active Healthy and Ageing Board, and also the petition be referred to the CEO and relevant officers for consideration and for a report to come back to Council in relation to this. And finally, I'd just like to thank the people that have taken the time to organise this petition and to submit it here to Council.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Is there a seconder? Yeah. Councillor Rennie, is there a second?
Just a question.
Yes.
I'm just wanting to make sure we're clear about we've had issues before about petitions and just making sure that we protect the confidence of the names and addresses. I haven't seen the petition, but just wanting to make sure that we are aware of how we're going to ensure that people that have signed the petition, their names and addresses remain within Council and aren't provided externally in any way, just from a privacy protection point of view.
I don't think there's any issue with that. I have a copy of the VIA and I'll hand them over to the CEO.
Yeah, but I think Councillor McCarthy's question is probably referring it to the Active and Healthy Ageing Board.
Well, if I'm correct, usually under the Privacy Act, Council has restrictions, the CEO has restrictions. We can't impose those same restrictions on a committee of Council.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy.
And so I just want to make sure that we're protecting people's privacy.
I have a question too.
Can we just deal with one question at a time, please? So under our local laws, it says that the petition can be referred to an appropriate committee. My question is the committee, the Active and Healthy Ageing Board, a committee for the purposes of this local law? Which it is. Yeah. Okay, Councillor Messina.
I was wondering if the people that signed the petition actually had signed a consent form to reveal their names and addresses to the Healthy and Ageing Board Committee. Because under the Privacy Act, I think they must.
So the question is how we share it with the Active and Healthy Ageing Board, and it would not be council practice to give them a copy of the people's names and addresses. It would be to give them a copy of the text of the petition and perhaps how many people signed it and where they're from based on their address and things like that, and not to identify them in any way, I would imagine. I'll just hand over to the CEO.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I don't think it's mutually exclusive. We can refer it to the committee, but also make sure the privacy provisions are taken care of. So I'm confident that we can do that and will do that.
Okay. Now I was going to put that motion to the vote. So all of those in favour?
Yeah.
The motion is carried. Are there any other petitions? No. We'll move now to item 7, urgent business. Is there any urgent business? No? Item 8, consideration of reports. Before I move to the first item, the CEO would like to make a clarification.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and apologies to the community and the people in the gallery, the published table of contents for the council meeting agenda referred to in item 8.8. This was a mistake, something that was included in error. The recycling contract will actually need to be considered in committee, so it's a confidential item. So apologies for any confusion there.
Thank you for that. So now on to 8.1, proposal to permanently close Edwin Street at Station Street in Fairfield. That's moved by Councillor McCarthy and seconded by Councillor Messina. Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Messina. It's a great relief for this item to finally come to Council at this stage and to have achieved this outcome. As councillors may be aware, there's been a long-running issue for residents in Edwin Street, dating back a number of years, in fact, some 8 years or so, where a high volume of trucks and heavy vehicles have been using Edwin Street as a cut-through to other streets, and this has caused, obviously, a great deal of distress for the residents. It led to significant local resident action, including filming the activities that were taking place and the dangers that were posed to pedestrians. It is an unmade road, and therefore it also poses a number of other issues in terms of the structure of the road and the volume of traffic that was using it to cut through. A few years ago in 2014, Council considered this proposal and looked to put temporary barriers in place to reduce through traffic. And last year, in 2017, Council considered a proposal, and that proposal is what we are hopefully finalising this evening, which is to permanently close Edwin Street at one end. This proposal has been supported by residents. We haven't had any objections to this proposal. Residents are very pleased with the outcome because they understand that this brings to an end a series of issues that they've dealt with on their small street for a number of years. So it is a great pleasure to move this motion, and the motion is, as councillors would see, is to approve the placement of a permanent obstruction to formally close Edwin Street at Station Street to vehicular traffic, and approve the placement of a notice regarding the closure in the Government Gazette. We have to go through a government process and invite objections when we undertake to close a road. That is the process that we've undertaken, and as you can see, no objections have been raised. It is a well-supported proposal, and I'm very pleased, and thank you to the officers and the community for working to get us to this stage.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Messina.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. I'm happy to endorse the officer's recommendation. I acknowledge that Council followed the statutory process after residents raised concern regarding the poor condition of the unmade street. I acknowledge that the consultation process and know that no written submissions were received objecting to the closure. Therefore, I'm happy to endorse.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Moving now to 8.2, La Trobe University Proposed Ministerial Planning Scheme Amendment C165. Now, just hang on just 1 second. Do we need a mover and a seconder before we go to the submission? No? I think no. No, because we've already had the other one. Okay, I'll call on Andrew Van Vakaris to make a submission. We'll just get you a microphone. Is it just there in front of you? No.
Have you got a big voice, Andrew?
Oh, the people watching online won't be very happy if you do that. Can we grab this handheld one here in front of the directors, the general managers? Sorry. We'll bring it to you. It's all right. It should come out. Okay.
Okay, thank you for hearing my submission. I work for the Trade University, so I just want to clear that up front. The Trade University, based at its Bundoora campus, has been an integral employer and educator for the entire northern region over 50 years. The university has driven to continue its role in shaping employment and innovation while delivering on the aims highlighted in the state's Plan Melbourne and the Latrobe National Employment and Innovation Cluster, as well as Darebin's own economic development strategy contained in the Darebin planning scheme. The university has immediate opportunities to attract major investment and partnerships to the Darebin area, not only creating ongoing employment opportunities for the region, but also allowing the university to consolidate its globally competitive position as a leading research and education institution based in Melbourne's north. Beyond the university's core teaching buildings, the campus is already host to Victoria's Agri-Bio facility, the Latrobe Private Hospital and Medical Centre, Latrobe Sports Park and a range of health and medical research centres on campus, including the Centre of Alcohol Policy Research, Australian Institute of Primary Care and Ageing, Centre for Health and Communication and Participation, the Olga Tennyson Autism Research Centre, the Centre for Sport and Social Impact, and excellence in advanced molecular imaging. However, the current planning framework was designed to support the university's historic model of self-financing and delivering campus facilities. To remain globally competitive as an institution, the university needs to move beyond public financing to a range of alternative methods available to respond to opportunities as they arrive, including industry partnerships, which require hybrid education and financing agreements. So what we've done is we've consulted with the state government and the local government planners, and we've come up with an appropriate planning solution which will enable us to have a straightforward schedule amendment which can be made to the current zoning, which enables planning clarity to the partners and potential partners getting involved. To assist the planning agencies in comprehending the exact partnership areas we're talking about, we've identified it on a plan to give everybody surety that we're not talking about the whole campus. For note, all the land is contained within the Latrobe National Employment and Innovation Cluster. All the areas identified are either separated by the 30-hectare wildlife sanctuary, bushland covenants, heritage overlays, or the multi-lane Plenty Road.
And we're at time now.
Okay, no worries. So please support the recommendation.
Thank you. Thanks. I'll now call on Peter Roberts to make a submission.
Just to make the point that I'm currently the president of the Stratham Golf Club and also the president of Sage Stratham Open Space Community Coalition. It's a real concern that with this request to support in principle the proposed planning scheme amendments, there's not really much detail about the actual projects proposed to be undertaken and also the respective partnership arrangements. These are two crucial issues that I consider the council has a duty of care to make further inquiries before making a decision on this proposal. Within the document attached to the council agenda, there's a lot of other statements such as that there's no supporting evidence. Such statements include that the amendment will deliver clarity and certainty with respect to the interpretation of the law. That's pretty hard to establish, I can assure you. And also we've got the situation where they're talking about projects to be undertaken in the near future, and therefore it's considered appropriate that the council is giving further details of these projects. There's a statement made by Latrobe, or attributed to Latrobe, that the proposed projects are exempt within the current legislation. But there's no supporting documentation or evidence to support that claim. And really, given that situation, it doesn't justify the council making a decision. There's also the point that it's claimed that it's going to assist third-party representatives. I would say that that's third-party interest, because that's still not the case if there is still a bit of doubt about clarification of whether these projects are falling within the relevant legislation. I finally make the point that I consider that Latrobe should be required to conduct an open and transparent process and fully consult with the community and local councils and local parliamentary members with respect to the projects undertaken and the partnerships before any decision is made.
Thank you. We're over time now. Thanks. And so if there's no more submissions, I'll go to councillors. Councillor Greco.
May I have an alternative motion to move? I'll give councillors the opportunity. I said it around this afternoon, but I'll give councillors the opportunity to reread it.
Councillor McCarthy.
Just before we receive a seconder, I understand that there's been some movements in this situation. I just wanted to check through yourself to maybe our officers, Mayor, if there's anything that we need to be aware of in relation to considering this motion to have the strongest and appropriate position based on the current circumstances.
Ms Wilkinson? Ms Olivia? Oh, we'll get the microphone back from over.
So, through you, Madam Mayor, since this report was written, we understand Latrobe have made the request to the Minister that this amendment be put through. What that means is that there are a few references in this report that talk about that, so it will happen. Actually, it has now, that request has now been made. In regards to the recommendation as drafted, it's still appropriate that change in time wasn't affected.
Thank you.
May I make a correction? The motion that's up there was another change to that motion with the inclusion of an extra clause which doesn't appear.
Okay, there was an email from 5:18 p.m. that had point number 4. I don't know if that made it to. Did that get sent to you? Yeah. Just wait.
Mayor, I move the above motion.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Is there a seconder for that motion?
Can I ask another question?
Yes, Councillor Rennie.
I'd seek some clarification from officers.
Can you speak up, Susan?
Sorry, Councillor Rennie's just got a throat infection, so she's having trouble. She'll do her best.
Through you, Mayor Lassurf, I seek some clarification from the officers on likely costs associated with the public consultation process in this context.
Officers?
It always depends on the detail of scope, but for a consultation on this sort of thing, you'd expect 20,000 or 30,000 perhaps.
Councillor Newton.
Through you, Melisef, to the officers.
Can I bring your microphones forward a bit?
Yeah. Through you, Melisef, to the officers. I was wondering with the amendment, if council is the appropriate people to be undertaking the public consultation, or would it be better to ask Latrobe to do consultation?
I'll ask the CEO to answer the question.
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor. The request is that council support a request by Latrobe University for a planning scheme amendment to occur without notification. In the event that there are two ways that if council was not of a mind to support that request, which is to, agree to an amendment without consultation. If council was of a mind to require or request that consultation occur, there are two pathways. One is that council writes to the minister and to Latrobe and asks the minister to ask Latrobe to conduct the consultation, or alternatively that council would do it. Council's consultation in this would have, unless the minister was inclined to support that request, any consultation by council would have no statutory weight unless council became the planning authority. So either is appropriate, but both is a mechanism.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillors, is there any other questions, or is there a seconder for the motion? I'll declare the motion lapsed. Who's want of a seconder? Councillor McCarthy.
I was just going to propose that the mover might consider the advice from officers regarding the matter.
The motion's now lapsed. I declared it lapsed. I gave you a bit of time to put forward alternatives. And so we can now consider another motion. If someone wants to now move a different motion. Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Melisef. Could I move a motion that we ask Latrobe to undertake a public consultation?
Could you write down the words of your motion and then it can be considered for a seconder?
Yes.
Yep.
So, So I'd like to move an alternate motion and I'd like the CEO to read out the wording. Yes.
Three apologies, I don't have this, you'll have to type as I speak, but that Council 1 notes Latrobe University's Melbourne Campus Planning Scheme Amendment proposal and resolves that it does not support the request for a ministerial planning amendment under the provisions of 20 Part 4 of the Planning and Environment Act, i.e. that the amendment occur without public notice. 2, I can't do it again. Yeah, got it? Yeah. Yep. And 2, writes to the Minister for Planning and Latrobe University requesting that the Minister require that Latrobe University conduct public consultation as per the requirements of the Planning Environment Act.
Yes, thank you. I agree with that.
Sorry, so that's moved by Councillor Newton and seconded by Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Newton.
So I do note the concerns that we've had from members of the audience tonight, and I do think this is one that's worth looking at more closely. But I think with the officers saying that this might cost council $20,000 to $30,000, I don't think that it's justified that we undertake a public consultation. And I do think this is worth looking further into, and hopefully we can get La Trobe to do some consultation. Thanks.
Councillor McCarthy?
May I ask, could we see the motion written up?
Yes.
Yep.
I was just going to move through the movers and the mover and seconders, and then we'll see if it's ready by then. Are we happy with that? Are we happy to proceed on that basis?
Yep.
Okay. Councillor McCarthy? Okay, hang on. Just stop. No, but they've got 2 more minutes. It's 2 more minutes. Well, we wanted to have a look at it up on the screen. Did we get the first point? Is it just the second point? We didn't get the first. Can we go first? Okay. Okay, that should be coming up on the screen shortly now. That first bit would be deleted, that top line. Yep.
It's different to what you read out.
Yep.
The consultation is for planning RNI.
Can I edit the word consultation?
No, it's just because I wrote down what you said. That's fine.
So that'll, can I just say Latrobe is 2 words, but apart from that, good.
And a capital P for plan?
In point 2.
That's my fault.
That's
okay.
That's okay. So are we happy with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
There's a few minor adjustments we need to make in terms of the grammar. We can do that. Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you. I just wanted to start off by thanking our officers for their fast work in actually getting that down. Because when we are trying to get the right decision, the strongest decision, and also do that in a timely fashion, we are asking people to work quickly, and I really appreciate your work, so thank you so much. I think that the alternative that Councillor Newman has put forward with advice from officers actually is going to put us in the strongest position that we could be in right now for a number of grounds, and I think it responds directly to the issues that were raised by members in the gallery this evening, which is that we don't believe, despite the lofty aspirations of any institution in our community, which may be great or they may not be great, and that's not for us to determine here tonight because we are not the responsible authority, we don't believe that there is grounds for rushing off to the Minister to bypass the public notice process. And in this case, whilst the proposals under this planning scheme amendment are largely, as is stated in the report, about providing confidence to potential partners rather than about significant change to the planning arrangements, the public notice and the opportunity for public input here is the key issue. And so Council's proposal here, if adopted, essentially says that we do not support a request by Latrobe, which has already gone to the Minister, to bypass the public notice process, and that public notice should occur, and therefore we are requesting of both the Minister and Latrobe University to undertake that public notice process. What that may in fact result in is really up for the Minister to determine. It is always up to the Minister to determine in relation to a planning scheme amendment, and whilst it would be a nice thing for Council to spend a large amount of money undertaking a consultation process, we know from our difficult experiences in this chamber and in the community that it is very easy for the Minister to say, thanks very much for your report, but I'm choosing to proceed down the pathway that I otherwise was going to. So we are putting this back onto the Minister and Latrobe to undertake that consultation process, and that's where it should sit, and I hope that they heed the advice of Council and the community.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. The wrong button was pushed, so you got 3 minutes on the screen. So.
There we go.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I would like to for councillors to consider an amendment, and the amendment will be that also the council, as advised by the CEO, that council is also takes part in the consultation process with the
Councillor Greco, you're starting to debate your amendment. Do you want to propose the word? What's the wording that you're proposing?
The proposal of the words is to pick up on my motion in regards to that the council, Darebin Council, conducts the consultations with the community regarding the amendment process that's been proposed by Latrobe University. And in my talk, I'll explain why I put it.
So you're proposing a third point to this motion.
Point, yes.
That's
just to strengthen the.
That's the same as the third point to your last motion, which is to the second point. Council undertakes a public consultation process to determine the views of the community regarding the proposed amendment request. Does the mover accept that?
No, I think it's unnecessary.
No, that's okay. We don't get into debate.
No.
So that's not accepted by the mover or seconder. So you'd like to move that as amendment, Councillor Greco?
Yeah, look, I'll move that as an amendment.
Is there a seconder for the amendment?
I'll second that to enable Councillor Greco to put his position.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie. Councillor Greco.
Yeah, look, I'll just speak in relation to the third point there, and I'm glad that that my motion was not completely lost, and I'm glad that Councillor Newton has picked up the essential sentiments of my original motion. The third point, why I've put that there, is that with our interaction with La Trobe University and also with our interaction with the community that's been engaged with La Trobe University, I think it's incumbent on the council to actually conduct the consultation process. Why I say that, councillors, and with all due respect to La Trobe University, is that I think there's been a breakdown in trust, with La Trobe University from the community's perspective and La Trobe University. And whilst I agree with the 2 points there in the motion, but writing to the minister, asking for the minister to just to formally, publicly exhibit the proposal, I don't think goes far enough in terms of collecting the sentiments from the community, because it's too far detached from council. What is being proposed is in relation to what is happening here within the boundaries of the city of Darebin, and I think we have an obligation to our community to ensure that proper, thorough consultation does take place in relation to this amendment that's been proposed by La Trobe University. And why I also say that, councillors, is because, as has been mentioned by members of the gallery, what La Trobe University is actually doing is bypassing the process. La Trobe University is seeking a special determination by the minister in order for the minister to consider this particular application, and not for the council to consider their particular application for the change in the amendment process. So that to me already says that there isn't, in a sense, a full trustworthy relationship there, because if La Trobe University were very open and transparent, they would have asked for the amendment via the council. But because they've gone directly to the minister, I think therefore it's incumbent on us to make sure that the process is transparent, open, and that we keep a watchful eye in relation to what the community says, so that we can feed that back to the minister, and so that the minister can make a decision accordingly.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Councillor Rennie? No? Are there any other speakers? Councillor McCarthy.
Look, I'm going to speak against the additional point, and for good reason. I think we need to take this one step at a time. If we were to initiate a public consultation process at the same time as we are asking the minister and La Trobe University to undertake a public consultation process, we are effectively and potentially undermining our request. And this is actually the most important trigger in this process right now, because if the Minister and La Trobe University decide not to provide public notice and to not support that going forward, then we're in a very different situation. And in fact, it doesn't matter what we consult on in our community, the Minister will be sending the message very clearly that he's not interested in that element of information. So I think we actually need to act in good faith to try to convince the Minister, and I would urge Councillor Greco to put his efforts in that direction, and in terms of lobbying advocacy, to really try to convince the Minister to provide that public notice as has been requested. I'd also draw Councillors' attention to pages 12 and 13 of the agenda, where it states quite clearly that without Council support of this amendment, approval of the amendment by the Minister will be more difficult to justify. Now, Council is taking a position, if this is adopted, to say we believe it's really important that public notice occurs. That public notice, if it does occur, helps inform Council's position. But that should be at the cost of La Trobe University, not Darebin Council, because otherwise all we are doing is shifting onto the public purse the cost of what should otherwise be a privately funded consultation process. So I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think that's what ratepayers expect. And I think if the Minister is interested in public conversations about this, then he'll support our request, as is outlined very clearly in the report. But let's not undermine our request by actually going and doing the work that we're otherwise asking La Trobe and the Minister to do.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour to support the amendment?
Sorry, is this with 3 or without?
To support adopting the amendment, so point 3 into the motion. So all those in favour to adopt of the amendment and against, that motion is lost. So we'll now go back to the substantive motion, which is points 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So we've had the mover and seconder speak. Are there any further speakers to this substantive motion? Councillor Amir.
I think there's no question here about the importance of La Trobe University in our community, both as an employer and as an education provider, and as the biggest, most significant university we have in Melbourne's north, and many students in the city of Darebin. I must say I'm quite disappointed to learn that the university decided to go ahead with this request. On one hand, to seem to be asking for our support, and on the other hand, demonstrating that it's not significant enough to wait for this meeting before going forward. To me, it demonstrates a lack of respect. And given that it's very clear that we are not in a decision-making position, we're not the jurisdiction with authority over this. Basically, our support is a gesture of goodwill, of good faith, of being seen to support the university, and so. To me, it doesn't seem very fair that that respect should go one way and not the other. I do absolutely recognise the challenges facing universities at the moment, including the terrible underfunding of tertiary education. I will put that responsibility on the federal government for that lack of funding, which does have very significant impacts for staff and students, both in terms of education and research, and I hope that there is more that we can do, probably at all three levels of government, to make sure that La Trobe can be as strong as possible in those areas of education, tertiary education provision, and really high quality research for the benefit of those students and staff, and for the community more broadly.
Thank you, Councillor Amir. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Rennie.
Yes,
do you want to get the handheld mic? Would that be easier?
No, I'll just hold this. I have a great deal of ambivalence about this, but I'm actually going to vote against it because I think it's important that an alternative perspective be heard, and that is that we may be asking for a great deal of consultation on something that is actually not of the significance that the community might be led to believe. And that is because there are already planning exemptions in place for this piece of land, and the planning exemptions already allow for the significant built form, and this change that La Trobe University is asking for is essentially, as I understand it, to enable similar built forms to be constructed in partnership with the university and other private operators or community partners. They could be not-for-profit hospitals or sporting facilities, and to enable some certainty. And the complication with consultation is that we may raise community expectations that they can somehow change planning controls that are fixed and they're not actually the subject of the consultation. The land in question already has the significant exemptions, and the university is looking for certainty about whether those exemptions apply when they're looking to build or construct something in partnership with someone else. And I think that it is really important in our messaging that we make sure that the community is aware that those are the limits of the consultation, and that other factors and other historical concerns that the community have don't get brought into this, because that's actually not going to be satisfied through a consultation process.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie. Are there further speakers? Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I'll support the motion and as it is, because I think it's at least it's a step forward in relation to council taking a position. I think it has to be highlighted what is the La Trobe University seeking. La Trobe University is seeking an amendment to the planning scheme in relation to the zoning, which is in public use of zoning. What La Trobe University want is that they want to enter into partnerships with the private sector in terms of building, possibly building, having building projects on their land, and which at the moment, because it's zoned as public use, it creates ambivalence, or it creates uncertainty for the private investors in relation to dealing with La Trobe University. So that's the background of it. What actually is very important about this application is, and this is where I took a deep interest in this, is that La Trobe University is bypassing council. La Trobe University, instead of coming to council and asking council about amending the planning, it's gone straight to the minister and actually seeking a special dispensation by the minister to actually consider this and for council not to consider it. And I think that we need to really make a big note of that. Also, with all the issues that were mentioned about, there's not enough detail in this report and guarantee that of what La Trobe University will do in the future. Also, I think that
10 seconds.
whilst this motion will hopefully be supported, is that I think we have to keep a very watchful eye on what consultation actually takes place, because we've seen in the past when La Trobe University has consulted with the community that it's been quite lacking, because we've seen some of the backlash that's come from the community in regards to how they've consulted with them. So on that basis, I support this motion.
Are there any further speakers? Would the mover like a right of reply?
No, thank you.
No? Okay, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour and against? That motion is carried. Okay, moving now to item 8.3, Solar Saver Progress and Special Charge Scheme. Councillor Amir.
I need to declare a conflict of interest for this item. I have a financial interest as declared at the start of the meeting.
A direct
financial interest.
Thank you. We'll just wait till Councillor Amir leaves the chamber. Okay, Councillor McCarthy, you wanted to move the motion?
Yep.
And is there a seconder? Moved by Councillor Messina. Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to move this, and I congratulate Councillor Amir for being one of the 481 property owners that has put themselves forward as part of this fantastic initiative, which is now the first step or the most recent step in our major journey, having been through Solar Savers round 1 and 2, where we installed almost 500 solar systems on the homes of low-income households, pensioners, community houses, community buildings, and some rental properties as part of the Northcote Thornbury Housing Co-op. It is very exciting to be moving forward today with an equivalent number of houses that covers the equivalent number of properties that we've done up until now. This is the first tranche in our commitment in our council plan to spend $20 million over 4 years. The majority of that money will be recouped within a 10-year period through the rates that people pay back, because they will be effectively putting solar on their roofs, systems up to 5 kilowatts in most cases, and we'll be paying that back, but in fact saving more money than they pay. And that's an exciting part of this program. Tonight, if adopted and following through on the commitment we've made, we'll be investing $2.5 million in getting solar on the roofs of 481 households, not just the low-income and pensioner households, but a range of other households as well. And this means that we can scale up this program to a whole new level. So it is really bringing our community together, neighbourhood by neighbourhood. In terms of renewable energy generation, this decision tonight will provide 2 megawatts of additional solar power in our community, which is significant. We have a target of some 18 to 19 megawatts of additional solar, which will double our current capacity, and we're planning to do that over the next few years by 2021. So this is a major decision tonight. It is one of the most important decisions that this council will make, which is actually getting our new Solar Savers program underway, and of course getting those solar systems on the roofs of our residents. For those residents who have up until now had great anxiety during heat waves about putting on the aircon and making themselves feel comfortable, particularly those older residents who are most vulnerable, they don't need to worry anymore, because they will be obviously saving energy, they will be reducing their power bills, but they'll also have the comfort and freedom in those situations to be able to keep themselves as comfortable as possible and minimise those heat risks. that we know hit people, particularly our older and more vulnerable residents, harder than anyone. So this is significant in terms of sustainability, in terms of economics, in terms of job creation, but also in terms of human health. And it is one of the flagship programs of this council, and as councillors would see, has been adopted by councils all across parts of Melbourne and of course all the way across in Adelaide. And just recently we heard Western Australia talk about how they were excited by adopting Adelaide Solar Savers program, and they were corrected, it's actually Darebin. So
thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Messina.
It's a pleasure to add to this innovation for this City of Durban. I want to thank officers for their time and effort to formulate this report. I'd like to draw your attention to the council plan for 2017 that this council formulated. We will be leaders in creating a sustainable city through local innovation projects that address climate change. We will improve the well-being of people in our community by providing opportunities for them to live their lives well. Well, this is what we have done. I want to also, the Solar Saver program is open to all residents for solar systems up to 5 kilowatts. So that what we have tabled here is the householder agreement. This clearly states that the council will pay for costs and recover the costs through a special rate levy, which is yet to be determined. In addition, we have tabled the expression of interest. 1,500 homes expressed interest, 900 agreed to provide details for a quote. 601 homes received quotes, 481 have signed agreements. We here at Council have committed to $5.4 million in this Council draft budget for the delivery of the Solar Saver program. In addition, it is important to note that we have given preference to low income earners, pensioners, renters, social housing and the cold community. It is also important to note that officers in Council are working on a business program that will be presented to Council in June 2018. I know there have been many eager businesses I've spoken to on many multi-social media platforms that are looking forward to this. This is a plus for job creation and a plus for sustainability in Darebin.
Thank you, Councillor Messina. Are there any further speakers? No, if not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Would someone go and collect Councillor Mitt? Thank you. Now we'll move to item 8.4, 700 to 718 Heidelberg Road, Elphington, application for review number P607 2018. That is moved by Councillor McCarthy and seconded by Councillor Rennie. Councillor McCarthy.
Just briefly in relation to this item, councillors may recall that there's been an 8-storey application that was considered by Yarra City Council, and Council, of course, as an interested party, undertook to make a submission to that process. Yarra Council, in that case, reduced the height of the building from 8 stories to 5 stories, and of course, at that point in time, none of the objectors, including Council, sought to have that decision reviewed by VCAT, and we're happy to move ahead with that proposal as a reasonable outcome compared to the original 8-storey proposal. What has taken place is that now the applicant has sought to have a review of that decision, and so therefore Council has the opportunity, and that is the decision before us tonight, to lodge a statement of grounds through that process as any objector would, and to put our case as to why we wish to support the status quo decision of the 5 stories, or in fact challenge any of the proposed amendments. The main amendment or the main review that's being considered by the applicant and being sought by the applicant is a reconsideration of the reduction in height, which means that if Council wishes to say 5 stories was high enough and 8 stories was too high, we need to be part of that process. So what the recommendation here puts forward is that we effectively request our officers to lodge that statement of grounds, to attend the practice day hearing, to negotiate the best position from council's perspective, and of course to present our submissions at the hearing or any other forums that may appear along the way. And of course this also gives us the opportunity, if supported tonight, to call expert witnesses. We obviously know that Heidelberg Road is a section of our area which we border and share with the City of Yarra, and of course it does not have structural planning controls at this stage, and so therefore we are dealing with the planning schemes of respective councils, in this case Yarra Council. So it is really important that we're involved in this process. I support the proposal that's put forward by our officers to continue to be involved, and I hope that we get a positive outcome and support the substantive decision that was made by Yarra originally.
Thank you. Councillor Rennie.
Yes, I'd just like to briefly add further to that it's very important that Darebin participates in this process, even though it's in the City of Yarra, because what happens on the south side of Heidelberg Road may have a bearing at some later stage on the sort of development that's allowed on the north side of Heidelberg Road, which is of course the side that's in Darebin. So in terms of why would Darebin become involved in a planning matter in Yarra, it's because it has a very direct impact on the sort of planning applications that we might see in the City of Darebin. And we know that our residents and our community is more conscious of the general amenity and the impacts of development in that area generally, and don't necessarily make a distinction of which side of the road that they're on.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? No, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Next item is 8.5, Mayor Park Master Plan Community Project Control Group. Councillor Rennie? Hang on, we'll just fill in the names.
We just need to have the names.
Yeah.
Yes, I'd like to move this motion with appointing the following people, and I'll read out the names. Marcus Desulfy, Chris Lombardo, Dejara Golding, Catherine Acton, Kelly Marks, Tony Barbara, Kristen Doran and Christopher Jennings.
And a seconder is seconded by Councillor Councillor Williams. We'll go for Councillor Rennie.
Yes, it's a great pleasure to be at this point this evening where we're appointing the Project Control Group for Mayor Park. I think this is a fantastic way that we're moving forward and thinking about how do we develop master plans and how do we envision areas for the future. And we do that in partnership with our community and wherever possible giving as much power over to our community to be really active participants in the project. So it's fantastic that on this occasion we've had such talented and knowledgeable community members put up their hands to participate. I'm really delighted at the calibre of those people who applied and their diverse and long-standing interests in the area. In recruiting people, we did have an EOI process that was open for 3 weeks, and we were particularly looking for people with knowledge of local issues, an ability to contribute ideas for improving the park, an ability to represent a broad cross-section of views and diverse needs of the community, their availability to attend all meetings, and a desire to serve and act as local ambassadors or leaders for the Thornbury community. Very importantly, I think that these people will be able to think about what this park might look like, not just now in the next couple of years, but into the future. And that's been an important part of the selection process, is assisting our community and those people who are appointed to this project control group to understand that this is about what the park looks like in 10 or 20 years, not just about the type of play equipment they might want for their kids in 2 years' time. It's really far-reaching, and I think it's going to be a fantastic opportunity, and I hope that it heralds a way that we'll do more things like this in the future.
Thank you, Councillor and Councillor Williams.
It's really great that the people of the Friends of the Mayor of the Park group have actually been working together for a number of years. They've done a lot of work and they've obviously pushed even council to their limits where we couldn't obviously have open cinema nights, and they've gone the initiative and the incentive to go ahead and do that. And once again, apart from those cinema nights. They've also done markets, and here once again they're doing a great area in doing a master plan, which is in need of this particular area. So I'd like to take a moment to say thank you to that group. And I think they will also have some wonderful outcomes, considering what they've done in previous years and what they've been able to accomplish. I can only see wonderful things happening for this park for the future.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? Councillor McCarthy.
Look, I'd just like to add a couple of points in relation to this. It's actually terrific that we're now at this stage. I put forward a motion at the behest of the Friends of Mayor Park and other residents a number of years ago now. In fact, after the council made a very clear decision at the time not to proceed with that site as the location for the proposed multi-sport stadium, despite the intense lobbying from members of the state government at the time. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that the journey from where we were to where we are now is one of community empowerment, because along the way from that point, when the community had the win of saying we've saved Mayor Park, and in that case saved it from being covered in concrete, to in fact saying, well, let's actually continue the great community building efforts that Councillor Williams just mentioned. And when the question was put, well, how do we get a playground? How do we get some improvements to the fencing? How do we actually make sure that this park continues to be a green space that is great for kids to play, for soccer clubs and others to recreate, and of course the huge amount of walkers and runners that use that space as well. And the obvious thing was to actually go through a planning and master planning process. And it might be, in fact, that there is very little change that takes place to Mayor Park other than retaining the things that make it great, or there may be some new additions. There are some things that have been signalled by the community over a number of years, and the PCG process, the Project Control Group process, which we're already undertaking with Pendas Park, is a great way to put the community in the driver's seat. I support everything that's been said about the people who've been put forward to comprise this group. I recognise every name there as people who've played an active role in bringing Mayor Park into what it is today, which is a place where people not only feel safe to run around in the evening, which it wasn't the case a number of years ago, but in fact see it as their hotspot for their community activities, and look forward to seeing what they come up with.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers on this motion? Councillor Amir.
It's really exciting to see this group coming together. As has already been said, there's some real experts, local experts on this list who have been really interested and engaged with Mayor Park over many years. Mayor Park's right on the border of Kazali and Rucker Ward, so while it's not in my ward, it is certainly a park that's used by constituents in Kazali Ward, especially as that area along St George's Road and also up Gilbert Road are going to be increasing in density in the coming years, and so I think Mayor Park is going to become only more and more important for green open space for people in that area. It is used by very diverse groups. We've got the neighbourhood house just behind, used for sport, for dog walkers and general recreation use, as well as, of course, the Friends of Mayor Park open air cinema nights, which is good fun. It's also really exciting because this is the second park we've seen being developed with the new community model of putting the ownership in the hands of the community, and that's something that we've talked about for quite a long time, so it's exciting to actually be able to be putting it into practice now.
Thank you, Councillor Amir. Are there any further speakers? No, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Next item is 8.6, Darebin Community Awards Terms of Reference.
Happy to move.
That's moved by Councillor Newton. Is there a seconder? Councillor Amir. Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Melissa. So I'm pretty excited about moving this one. This relates to back in August last year when we changed the date motion. As part of that motion, we changed from what was then Australia Day Awards to now Community Awards. And I'm really excited about it because we've got two new awards in there, which are the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Community Leader of the Year, and we've also got the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Emerging Community Leader of the Year for under 21 years old, as well as the 3 existing community categories. So what this terms of reference does is it allows us to appoint an advisory committee to decide who gets the award, which is going to have the Mayor, 2 members of the Darebin Aboriginal Advisory Committee, a representative from the Darebin Ethnic Communities Council, a council officer for admin purposes, and this will allow us to appoint 4 community representatives. So I do really encourage anyone in the audience or listening at home to apply. I think it's a really exciting thing to be part of, and I look forward to hearing who the winners are once everything happens. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Amir.
I think it's really great that we're starting the community awards afresh, moving away from the connections with Australia Day to have new awards but also a new approach. And I'm really interested to see what this new community group comes up with in terms of what they value and what they think is important and what they think we should be celebrating in Darebin, because I think the answer to that question is really about what we as a community value here in our municipality and who we want to hold up as the exemplars of that. So it's certainly very exciting and will hopefully inspire young people and older people across the community to want to be those shining lights and those examples of the things that we love and value about residents in Darebin.
Thank you, Councillor Amir. Are there any further speakers? No, if not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried. I guess I'd just like to remind people that the nominations for the awards themselves are currently open and they close on July the 31st. Yes. And now on to 8.7, rescheduling of Planning Committee meeting for June 2018. Moved by Councillor Amir and seconded by Councillor Messina. Councillor Amir.
So this is just very briefly just rescheduling of one planning committee meeting from the 18th of June to the 25th of June to enable the CEO and all a large amount of councillors to be present. It doesn't change the frequency of planning committee meetings or the content. It's just a shift of 7 days, and the plans will be allocated accordingly.
Thank you. Councillor Messina.
Nothing further, Madam Mayor.
No, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Moving now to item 9, consideration of responses to petitions, notices of motion and general business. There is none. Item 10, notices of motion. 10.1 is Durban Station. Councillor Greco.
I move the motion in relation to Durban Station.
And seconded by Councillor Messina. Councillor Greco.
Thank you. Look, the motion is fairly self-explanatory, but I'll just go through some of the background so it puts councillors in the it gives councillors a perspective on what we're talking about here. Durban Station is it's been considered as one of the worst stations in Melbourne, and the main issues are not only associated with the station itself, but particularly from a council perspective, and this is where the council comes into it, is that the parking around the station is just grossly inadequate. A few years ago, when the zoning was changed, the travel zoning that is, when that was changed, when we did away with Zone 1, Zone 2 and Zone 3, it was a welcomed initiative that the state government brought forward, because we were finding at the time that everyone was going down to Reservoir Station because that's where Zoning 1 started. But then once the zoning was removed, that we saw people sort of distribute themselves around the various stations. But Durban Station was never catered for car parking. So when you drive by there or when you're around that area, it just seems like people just parking out in a paddock. That the parking is not sufficient enough. It's even got to the point, councillors, is that it's actually spilt over, not only on the eastern side to the neighbouring streets. And I personally have received a couple of complaints in relation to the congestion and the parking situation of people that live close to the station. And because we don't have any parking restrictions around that area, it's causing a lot of headache for the local residents. So what the motion therefore says is that we need to make some representation to the state government and to the state government transport authorities in order for them to really have a good look at what's happening there and to come up with some quick fixes and some quick solutions. And the reason why we need to do that is that, again, because we'll continue to get complaints which eat up and use council resources in trying to resolve this. I mean, some residents are actually asking me, why can't we go down the path of permits and things like that? That requires a lot of time, a lot of attention, and a lot of resources on the part of council. And I think the first step that we need to take is that the state government takes a role. So, as the motion there states, that we know that we write to the Minister for Transport and also the local member, Robin Scott, inviting them down to the station, and also that just try to find some quick solutions in terms of improving and alleviating the parking situation there. And whilst they are there, I think we should be asking them, just to do something about the station. We're about to redo the reservoir station with the crossing, and I think that it's an opportunity to incorporate Reuben Station as part of that bigger plan of redoing the reservoir station. So I hope council will support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Councillor Messina.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Greco. I think one of the eldest here in council. I think I've driven past Reuben Station or taken the train there for about 40 years. It hasn't changed. It's still it's like that black and white print you'd see in the foyer. It hasn't changed. It needs to change. It needs to be incorporated with the LXRA removal or the new outlook for the reservoir station, and it needs to be done. We're looking at implementations in the north, next to our neighbours, the city of Whittlesea, yet that we know that the residents of Whittlesea come through to the city of Darebin. They're addressing the issues out there, but they're not addressing the issues here at Darebin. Why aren't we mentioned on the report that was released just the other day? I look forward to some mention of it in the budget on Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? Oh. Councillor Mia.
I'd like to make an amendment.
Sure.
So I'd like to make an amendment to point 5A to change it to car parking facilities be immediately improved, then add phrase improved, cycling infrastructure also be improved to encourage cycling to the station, and then continue, and appropriately manage car parking at the station and neighbouring streets.
Happy to accept that.
Councillor Greco is happy to accept that, and so is Councillor Messina, so we can incorporate that. Can you get those words to be typed up? Yep, thank you. Would you like to speak to the motion, or? Yep.
We know that there's going to be more and more people moving to Reservoir. There already are, and while there will of course be people who need to drive to the station for a range of reasons, if we can get more people walking and cycling to the station, then that will have a huge impact on alleviating some of the parking concerns. One car park is enough space to store 10 bikes. So if we can get 10 people cycling to the station, then that's 10 car parks, or 9 car parks, then we then don't need. So Ruthven as a location, for some people it might be close enough to the city to be able to ride into work, but for a lot of people that's just an unrealistic distance. And what we've seen an increase of, including with bike share but also with private bike ownership, is people, particularly if they don't live within walking distance of the station but they are in good health, being able to cycle to the station if they've got somewhere safe to store their bike, whether it's bike racks, whether it's a bike cage or other infrastructure, that then make that choice rather than choosing to drive all the way into the city or park at the station, which is then increasing the parking pressure for those who need it.
Thank you.
On back.
Yep. We'll just get those words. We'll just wait till it comes up on screen. Okay, there they are there.
To be really improved, I don't think you could have we're too late now.
Have car parking and cycling facilities to be immediately improved.
It's too late. That would have been easier. I'm sorry. No, so car parking to be immediately improved, cycling infrastructure to be improved to encourage cycling infrastructure, comma, and cycling infrastructure to be improved. So this is one item. So in the list, so car parking facilities to be immediately improved, cycling infrastructure to be immediately improved to encourage cycling infrastructure, comma, and appropriately managed.
Yep. Councillor Rennie? Yeah. Councillor Rennie?
I'd like to suggest a further amendment if I could. Okay. And that would be point C, so that we would also request that C, amenity, safety and accessibility improvements be made immediately to increase walkability around the station.
We'll wait for those words to come up to see if they're accepted. Okay, there's the proposed change. Councillor Greco, are you happy to accept that? And Councillor Messina, so we'll incorporate that into the motion. Councillor Rennie, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. There is no doubt that Rutherford Station does need significant investment and improvement, and I thank Councillor Greco for his motion. I think it's important to note that one of the main reasons people drive to stations is not just distance, it's because they don't feel safe walking around the immediate area of the station. And the best practice now in many cases is not just to keep adding car parking to stations, but to ensure that stations are inviting places within inviting neighbourhoods where people will want to actively travel to those stations. We know that there are people who get in their cars and drive distances to our local stations when the walk could be 10 minutes or less. And that's not a desirable outcome, but in many cases it's understandable because people don't feel safe getting across the roads or actually entering into the station area itself. Or the significant car parks that we're building around stations sometimes impede accessibility. So I hope that a really integrated approach can be put in place, a holistic approach that looks at all the improvements that are required for Rutherford Station to make it a desirable station for people to get on or off the train at.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? No? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Moving now to item 10.2. Yep, sorry. Workforce, cultural diversity and leadership in local government. Councillor Greco.
Yeah, I'll move that, Mayor.
And seconded by Councillor Messina. Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Messina, for seconding. Look, as people would have noticed earlier in the month, there was a very damning report that was released by the Race Discrimination Commissioner. And what the report basically said that in Australia, it was a report that was looking at leadership positions in organisations, both in the private sector and also in the government sector. And basically, the report found that only 5% of people from a non-European background actually hold leadership positions in organisations. For example, only 8 people in the top 200 listed countries, listed companies are from a non-European background, and only 1 person of 103 of head of departments, whether state or federal departments, is a person from a non-European background. And also the report goes on and talks about universities and vice councils and how the figures are really startling in terms of having that representation from non-European backgrounds. Also, what the report talks about is how we've gone a long way, and there still is a long way to go in relation to gender equality in the workplace, but in relation to cultural diversity in the workplace, particularly at leadership positions, there still needs to be a long way to go. And also what the report talks about is how notwithstanding our multicultural society, that we're squandering really an opportunity of picking up on people in leadership positions that come from diverse backgrounds. Now, one may ask, what does that mean for Darebin? Why is it relevant for Darebin? Well, it is relevant for Darebin because in Darebin we have a very diverse community. And Darebin, has prided itself, has got a strong heritage in relation to diversity. We know that in the Darebin community, over 33% of the community is from a non-English speaking background, and also many more speak a language other than English in the workplace. But whilst we have that, only 14% of staff in the Darebin Council that work for Darebin Council, amongst the nearly 1,300 people that are in Darebin Council, come from a non-English speaking background. So we have a big gap there that needs to be addressed. And also the fact is that our council plan talks about valuing our diversity as an asset. I don't think we actually cut it in terms of doing that. And also there's the point that often local government is considered to be the tier of government closest to the people. I would argue that whilst we are the tier of government that's closest to the people, but we least represent the people that actually live here. So what this motion does is basically calls for a report in relation to what targets, what strategies we need to establish here in the city of Darebin in order to close that gap in the near future. And also, if I could just take up 2 more seconds, and also to congratulate the Commissioner for conducting such a study, because what this reveals is that there's no data in relation to these particular important issues.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Councillor Messina.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. According to the 2016 census, 155,022 residents call this vibrant municipality home. 33% of the people who reside here were born overseas. 6,000 are international students. Of these residents, there were 37 different religions, 138 different languages. Those figures are significant and relevant. Diversity is our strength, it's Darebin's strength, it's also Australia's strength. Diversity, as we should know, should benefit from all our residents in the municipality. Cultural diversity says we welcome and embrace diversity of thought, diversity of experience, diversity of background, diversity in education. What will we offer at a minimum? Increase in productivity and increase in creativity. Exposure to different perspectives and opinion. I look forward to a framework that I know that the Minister for Multiculturalism, Robin Scott, is formulating. Perhaps it is about de-identifying a CV through withdrawing name, sex and age in the early process of application. In my world, I'd like to believe that discrimination doesn't take place. That's the world that, however, may not be a reality. Therefore, I'm happy to support Councillor Greco's nomination. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? No, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Item 10.3, Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, CPTPP.
Happy to second.
Okay, we'll get Councillor Newton to move it first.
Yep.
Happy to move. Jumping the gun, Councillor McCarthy.
And moved by Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Melissa. So what we're talking about here is the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is also known as the CPTPP. This is a trade deal between 11 countries around our region. It doesn't include the US. And the reason that I'd like to put this forward as a motion is because there are some concerns with the CPTPP for local government that I think we need to address. This is something that has recently been signed in Chile, but the negotiations happened in secret before the CPTPP was signed on the 8th of March. And it hasn't been provided to the Australian Parliament or the public before that time. This ties in with our motion from the meeting on the 19th of March, where we adopted a motion to go to ALGA, the National General Assembly of Local Governments, that we have a look at the impacts that the TPP agreement may have, which should limit the ability of councils to enter into a range of strategies and policies. That includes environmental initiatives, local procurement, job programs and insourcing. So there is a concern that the CPTPP will have a negative impact on local government due to terms in the service chapter, and that it will impinge upon the right of council to make future decisions. There's also really big concern about the investor-state dispute settlement. So what that means in practice is, for example, in 2015, Philip Morris tried to sue Australia for their plain packaging on cigarette boxes. While that didn't go through, I think there's really big concerns that the ISDS clause means that it is possible to sue councils and governments, and I think that we really need to go ahead with this to put in submission to the Joint Standing Committee on Treaties by the 31st of May. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor McCarthy.
I wanted to demonstrate my excessive enthusiasm for Councillor Newton's proposal by jumping in to second it quickly, but also to note that this is not the first time in this chamber that we've taken a strong position in relation to this type of matter, and it was only a few years ago that Council adopted a very similar proposal in the earlier stage of the TPP, and in fact included an item in our Council newsletter to all residents basically saying this is something that we think is important and we think you should feel it's important too. And we do so because we do make a number of decisions, particularly in the procurement space in this city, where we privilege and prioritise local purchasing. We make particular decisions around our environmental purchasing, and we also more recently have made a significant decision to include as a requirement an opportunity for young people to gain either employment or valuable work experience through the contracting to various businesses and services. These are policies that we adopt locally and other councils do as well, which have an impact on the businesses that we do business with. And one of the potential impacts under the sort of regime that Councillor Newton described is that international actors, and I don't mean sort of the people in Hollywood, I mean businesses and operators actually can have an impact on the way we do business. And that is not, I think, what our community would expect should be able to occur. Obviously there are standards, international standards and national standards that we are very happy to sign up to, but that's very different to companies and organisations seeking to prevent us from implementing a strong and progressive social agenda on a range of issues. And you just need to look at the decisions we've made advocating against gaming machines in this city to think about how that could play out if an international company wasn't too happy with what we did. And that's where this sort of stuff actually has a very local impact.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I'll just make a few points in relation to this. As Councillor McCarthy, this has come to Council before. We've discussed it quite thoroughly. And I'm glad that this motion has come up to Council. I mean, if you look at the background in relation to the TPP, what actually hangs behind it is the notion that the market is supreme, and therefore councils or other government instrumentalities have to abide by market rules, and as a result of that, what the consequence of that is that the decision making or the democratic decision making of councils is compromised as a result of that, because of the adherence to the agreement and also the adherence to market rules. I mean, that goes really to the fundamental nature of an elected council, where councils that have been elected through a democratic process, we're not nominated, we're not an organisation, we're not a not-for-profit organisation, we're a not-for-profit organisation. So it actually impacts on our ability to represent our community and also to decide on behalf of our community how we want to spend their ratepayer money. And so again, drawing into what is the motivation behind such a treaty or such an agreement is some people claim that it's a backdoor way of actually privatising more and more government-run services because of the obligation to meet up with market rules and also to compete with private providers. And earlier tonight, I mean, we had a submission, we had a petition that came to council in relation to aged care services. That is also being run on the basis of a market-driven process, and again, that will be impacted, I would think, indirectly or directly by this Trade Pacific partnership, because again, it's based on the principles that the market overrules what organisations or government instrumentalities can provide as a service.
Sorry, that's time. Thank you, Councillor Greco. Are there any further speakers? No, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Next item is reports of standing committees. There are none. Item 12, records of assemblies of councillors. 12.1, assemblies of councillors held. That's moved by Councillor Williams and seconded by Councillor Messina. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Item 13 is reports by Mayor and councillors. They should be in front of you. That's moved by Councillor Williams and seconded by Councillor Rennie. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Item 14, consideration of reports considered confidential. 14.1, recyclable services contract. Councillor Rennie.
Move that we move into camera.
Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Williams. All those in favour? That motion is carried.